If you work for the Catholic Church and want to avoid burnout, overcome team dysfunctions, and put more souls in the pews, we're here to help. I'm Ty Hua, here with my co-host John Kahns, and we're providing leadership development for Catholic ministry professionals. Every week, you can expect engaging discussions, expert interviews, and actionable advice to help you move Jesus' mission forward in your parish. Today, we're rethinking Parish Ministries. John, this is long awaited. I think there's a lot of people that are going to be interested in this topic that have a lot to say, but probably won't say it.
Absolutely. I'm super excited. I've been thinking about it for a while, but this isn't going to be comprehensive by any means because I think the approaches, I think the application of this is as varied as the parishes that we have in our great United States and in the world. But before we do start, I got something fun. I got a little listener feedback. Do you want to hear it?
This is amazing because it's been a while since we've had a regular show.
I know.
So I would love to hear some listener feedback.
So it's kind of funny. And I'll have to ask you, Ty, is there such a thing as email etiquette that maybe I should have redone here? But with our partnership with Siouxland Catholic Radio, a link that was shared out, the link that was shared out is our podcast or the Google Drive link to the MP3. And so I got this random request for access from a email that I don't recognize at all to access this MP3. Wanted me to share it with them. And I just emailed them back without even thinking about it. It's just like, what do you want?
New email, who this?
It was just really curt. It was like, why do you want access to this? And that was it. No sign off, no like, hey, I'm just curious. And I don't know if I violated some level of email etiquette and just online nicery that I should have gone through. But true to her word, Becky is her name. Becky, she works with the St. Augustine Indian Mission in the Archdiocese of Omaha. She was so gentle. She's like, oh, sorry if I clicked something I shouldn't have. I heard your podcast online and I was trying to track down more episodes. And anyway, so what she said is she's enjoyed listening to the podcast since she found it. She shared the podcast site link with her pastor even. And she and her pastor even got a chuckle out of Ethel. They said, we're pretty sure she's a parishioner at our place. But anyway, Becky out at St. Augustine Indian Mission, let's keep in touch. I love that you're enjoying the show. Little shout out today for you here.
I love the Archdiocese of Omaha because when I was converting to the Catholic Church, I had a chance to go listen to a speaker. I forget which parish it was, but it was in Omaha, and it was a very, very beautiful church, very welcoming parish. So shout out to the Archdiocese of Omaha.
Yeah, well, and they've got a lot of good things going on. This particular parish, and a part of the reason I want to shout them out too is because I think they need our prayers. Like they're doing some good work. They've got 11 parishes assigned to their one pastor, it sounds like, and a Catholic school. So they are busy. Let's all keep them in our prayers. I'm sure the Lord is doing good work through them, but just to keep them uplifted and really, fertilizing the soil there, cultivating the soil that's there in the Archdiocese of Omaha with the St. Augustine Indian Mission. So Godspeed, people.
Amen.
Should we dive in? Should we get this done? I'm not even sure we remember how to do this. We've had so many conversations with people, but leading our own topic.
Yeah, let's do it. I think I remember. You got a story for us?
Yeah, I do. So this episode really was sparked. I knew I had to talk about it. My conversation with Jonathan Blevins last week on the podcast, and he talked about parish bulletin announcements. And we kind of commiserated on, usually that's the point in Mass. Like if they have Mass towards the end or somewhere in there, they do announcements for the whole parish. And that for me, honestly, is a time that I typically check out because usually I know the things that are going on, one, and two, most of them I don't want to participate in. And those are the two honest things. But what we talked about, this one parish had announcements that absolutely blew his mind. And he's like, everything they said was really something that he wanted to be a part of. It was an event he wanted to go to. He said, I really would love to be at that parish. They've got so many good things going on. And so this episode is about our desire for better engagement in our parishes. And that engagement that that we're going to talk about is really going to lead to one question that's really all about thinking about where we want to lead people to. What do we want to invite them to next? And parish bulletin announcements just fit right into that, because that is one of the areas, if we're talking about, that traditional funnel of like the catch-all, we just tend to throw out these announcements. That's kind of the top of the funnel in a lot of cases. And so it just really sparked this idea of like, yeah, we need to talk about this. How do we rethink our parish ministries? And how do we rethink the process for helping people to enter into the life of the church? And so next week, we'll apply these ideas to a couple of ministries, but we're going to just start with this bigger idea of how do we lead people through a funnel? How do we lead the people through a process as we rethink the ministries in our parish?
Let's do it.
And so this is the big theme for these funnels, right? This is a kind of a business idea, applying it to ministry. But I want to show how this really can help us to think about the process of leading people into deeper relationship with Jesus. And it speaks to the necessity for depth of experience rather than just quantity of people present, rather than just quantity of events offered. It's really, what is the depth of the experience that we're cultivating for people? Because we've all been in that situation. We've got a VBS and we knock VBS out of the park, and we get maybe even like 100 people that aren't even a part of our parish that want to, like 100 kids that they want to send here, and they're not part of our parish, but then they never come back. And why is that? Well, because we haven't had that big theme, right? That big idea. We haven't approached the idea of what are we actually inviting them to after VBS, right? And considering where they're at before we invite them to the next thing. In the same way too, we see this in confirmation all the time. So we confirm 75 kids in a year, but you actually know that 85% of them, 90% of them, they don't actually care, right? And we still push them through confirmation, right? So how do we fix this? How do we begin to transition this and begin to look at this in a different way so we can lead them more intentionally in those directions? And I want us to think about how these funnels, right? Again, starting with the top, catching a lot of people and funnel them down in one direction, how they fit the thresholds of discipleship and evangelization, those thresholds of and discipleship pathways of evangelization. And so we have seen from Sherry Waddell, and if you haven't, look up her book, Forming Intentional Disciples. It does a really good job of laying out this pathway that we want to bring people down. And it starts with these thresholds to evangelization. These are the things people need to get over, the movements that need to happen in their hearts so that we can walk with them deeper into faith. And those thresholds are a movement from mistrust into trust, right? Trusting someone that's in authority in the church, trusting someone that is that person that they know has real faith, right? And once they move then from trust into trust, then they might move from this place of being apathetic, complacent, to curious. So that's the next threshold where they move into curiosity. Okay, well, I trust this person. Well, now I'm curious about this, so I'm actively considering it. And then they move, then their hearts, the next threshold is an actual openness. Okay, I'm curious about it. Now I've heard enough. I'm actually open to considering that this Christian life, the Catholicism, I'm actually open to that change in my life where I would do that. Once they're open, the next threshold is an intentional seeking. This is where they're actively seeking then to move towards active participation in the church. They might be seeking to actually they're actually praying more. They're choosing to read their own books. They're seeking to grow in faith. The next threshold then is discipleship, right? So that threshold is actually moving in and like, I'm all in. I am pursuing Jesus. I want to learn and be like Jesus, that activated discipleship. And those are the 5 thresholds. Now, I think those are very good. I think that it's very practical. It makes a lot of sense. Those might be the movements in the heart. It's really hard to apply those in my mind in the church because it's 5 sections and we have so many different ministries and figuring out how they all go. So I actually like a little simpler. I like a little simpler model. And the discipleship pathway model is really simple. It says they're not a disciple. Then they become an intentional disciple. So they're a growing disciple. And then they become a missionary disciple. And those would be the 3 steps. Then you also have the classic focus model, right? You have their win, build, and then send, right? You want to win someone over to the idea of Christ. Then you want to build them up in the body of Christ. And then you want to send them to go make disciples for themselves, become missionary disciples. And so that's the kind of the idea of the funnel that we bring in. There really is a pathway. There is a journey in faith that people move along, and that we as workers in the vineyard, that we have to walk them along those pathways. Just keep rolling.
Well, there's just a lot to unpack there. I mean,
That's a lot of information.
I'm just trying to formulate it in a way that gets people to tune into it, right? Because it's like, well, how do you change the oil to a car? How do you all these different things, but how do you get somebody to actually realize that these are easy steps, right? Because when I'm listening to you talk about it, what I hear is um, there's different ways to build your discipleship army, right? But in the back of my mind, it's like, yeah, but that's is it? It's easy to say, but is it easy to do? And I
Right.
think
So
going into what you're going to cover next, that's why I don't have much to say because there's got to be this cohesion of the game plan and the execution, and I think you're going to cover that.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the I want to show how this might look, or honestly, let's talk first about how it often looks in our
Sure.
parish. So um, oftentimes how this looks in parishes, and I'm speaking out of my own experience, of course. There's people who don't fit this mold. There's parishes that don't fit this mold. So this first thing is the top of the funnel, right? This is kind of our catch-all stuff. This is kind of your big showy Jesus stuff. But our top of the funnel, if we're going to go with this classic focus model, like win, build, send, like we'll take that, we're going to run with it because it's nice, it's simple, it's clear, it's 3-step, like the 3-step program.
Yeah.
But how this often looks in our parishes, at this top of the funnel, this win, a lot of times, this really just looks like we're in the process of waiting for people to sign up for sacraments. And that's our catch-all. We know people are going to come in for these things, so we just wait for them to sign up for religious ed. We wait for them to sign up for baptism, confirmation, marriage prep, RCIA. Sometimes there's not a real intentional drive to get people for RCIA. We just say, hey, if they show up and they want to be Catholic, we'll have RCIA this year. And then the other thing is then we have the announcements at Mass. Those are our big catch-all stuff. Our bulletin invitation, maybe a fall festival or something, right? They're just the things that are already happening. And I say that it's an invitation, and this is kind of what sparked my conversation with Jonathan Blevins, is that we all want people to be more engaged in our parish, but a lot of what we do is just wait for them to sign up for things, and we offer things that they're oftentimes not interested in participating in, and so that's the top of our funnel in a lot of parishes. All right, so if that's the top of our funnel, then we're taking people to the next step. If basically sacramental prep and religious ed and some of those just little parish events are the top, the next step, then the build part of that, all that really is just pushing them through sacramental prep. It's pushing them through religious ed. It's your youth group, and it's ultimately geared towards reception of the sacraments, culminating either, well, really, I would say in confirmation. And then that's the build thing. You've really just built them to a point where they're just getting pushed through this sacramental program. And then finally, the bottom of the funnel, right? This finish line that we're really trying to get them to is that they're just graduating to becoming tithing members of the parish, right? And we can use whatever language we want about it. And we can try to flower it up, and we can try to make it sound more evangelical than it is. But that really is what the funnel looks like in a lot of parishes. Hey, we're signing with, it's August. Don't forget, religious ed starts next month. Don't forget, RCIA kicks off on this date. Don't forget, youth groups having their fall kickoff or whatever. And that's the top of our funnel. And because it's all focused on the youth, it actually doesn't actually help the adults to get to the point where they're active tithing members, where they're educated and giving. And and I would even say, you know, one of the key things we're really always trying to do is like, we might put someone through sacramental prep and they might be on fire. And so what we do with that person who's actually on fire, like somebody goes through the RCIA and they really wanted it. It's not just because grandma said, you know, you have to if you're getting married. They go through and then maybe they're actually on fire and they would say, oh, great, you should be a catechist. And we put them into this same funnel that snuffs out their fire a little bit. Right. I had a friend she was a focus missionary, a focus trained missionary, right? She was on Catholic on colleges evangelizing students, like discipling people actively. And she spent 1 year, I believe it was, maybe 2, as a catechist for like 9th and 10th graders. And it was enough to make her like drop out. She didn't lose her faith. Like she didn't lose her faith over it, but she was just like, I'm just exhausted. Somebody who had the energy to keep up with, she had the energy to keep up with college kids on campuses and light fires there, got put into the parish process, so like the parish funnel towards evangelization, and it like snuffed her fire. She was just like, I don't have the energy for this. Like I'm dying. I'm burnt out. College couldn't do that to her. College ministry couldn't, but parish ministry did. And so, you know, she would love to do adult formation, but there's no support for it. And this is the problem with the funnel, is it's all geared towards just pushing kids through the sacraments. And that's where we spend the majority of our time. So our whole funnel from the bottom up is built incorrectly to sustain the life of the church. So again, we have to consider what it is we're inviting people to. And I say that because then you can build from the bottom of the funnel up. If we just want tithing members, well, then I guess we're doing okay. But that's not what we want. We don't just want tithing members. We want people going out into the world to make disciples. But if they're going out, like what are they going to invite people to, right? And that's the other problem with the funnel sometimes in the parishes. What are they going to invite people to? Say I go out and I'm out in my community and I see somebody who needs Jesus. What am I going to invite them to in my parish? Right? So that's the conversation that it always comes down to. What is the funnel? So if I'm walking with somebody in faith, my first step probably isn't going to be to invite them to anything in my parish, because I know it's not set up to receive that. Right? I'm probably going to have some conversations with them, meet them for coffee. I might recommend a book. I don't know, but you always have to ask that conversation in evangelization, right? In the process of guiding your parish, what do we want to invite them to? And that ultimate goal is that they would be missionary disciples on fire for Christ and active in our community, not just in the pews on Sunday writing checks.
Yeah, I don't know. Finish your thought. I almost want to step on my soapbox because there's 2 things that pop off the top of my head as you're talking about flipping this funnel on its head. Yeah, I'm gonna get on my soapbox here in a little bit, but I'm gonna let you finish.
Yeah, the only other thing I can think of is, I think in order to flip the script a little bit, in order to reorganize the funnel, I think there's one key conversation. There's one crucial conversation, and especially if you're going to continue to use sacraments of initiation as the impetus, like as the top of the funnel to get people in the door. One of the key things we have to do if we want to have more impact in the kingdom, if we want to make more disciples, and we actually want them to be active disciples in our community, one of the crucial conversations we need to have is to tell people when they cannot receive the sacraments.
Mm.
We have to be willing to attach the weight of salvation that they have. We need to attach that weight of salvation of the sacraments to them. And we just have to remember, what are we inviting to? Again, that goal is missionary discipleship. And that doesn't happen if the sacraments are just collectibles that you get along the way as you go to church. They're not collectibles. Like they are the life that you are invited into. And we have to be able to honestly say to people, we cannot sponsor you for confirmation, right? We cannot baptize your child. And this is why, right? You need to walk with them in that. It's not, you can't just, don't shoo them out the door, but walk with them in that. And that's a hard conversation. So if we really want to have that impact, again, that's a key to it.
Boy, that is bold.
I mean it.
Does that bring us to our next segment of the Devil's
I thought you were
Advocate?
No, no,
Are we there
actually,
yet?
no. I was going to say then what this might look like, right? How could we adjust
Oh, okay,
course
okay.
if we're going to, um, I thought you were going to get in your soapbox, but we can save that. um,
I think the flow right now works better if you just keep going, because I'm going to throw you
all
off.
right. So if we're going to rework this, then we're going to kind of flip that funnel, but we're still looking at the top of that funnel and leading people down a pathway. The top of the funnel, this is your pre-evangelization stuff, and how do we begin um, adjusting course is with that, again, that win, build, send. What are we going to hear? We have to start with that beginning question that we brought up, that key question, which is, what am I inviting them into? What are we inviting them to next? And if you want to answer that question for people, you have to first figure out where they are on the journey and what are they interested in. So this is my proposal then for the top of the funnel, is to have a process for engaging them and collecting info, right? And I think a big part of that, the big picture piece here, is having everyone place themselves on that pathway. And that's where then the thresholds can come in. You can talk about these thresholds, or you can break it down. I mean, I've seen discipleship pathways that are 8 steps long or whatever, and you can pick anyone along there. So you can just keep it in the win, build, send. You can keep it simple, but have a process for having them identify where they are and helping them to understand if they're right with that or not. But I saw a really great, I mean, this can be a really simple communication card. You can put that out and just keep it really basic, make it simple, make it attractive, but it can literally call out the different events that you're going to have coming up. But a part of it also needs to be discussing, what are you interested in, like, in leaving space to write that. What can the parish do for you? Really assess their desires, the desires, why maybe they're just coming to your fall festival, right? Hand them out at the entrance of the fall festival, have them fill it out, have them identify where they're at, what they're looking for. Do they want Bible studies? You're going to collect this information because that allows you then to move them into the middle of the funnel. Not even to move them, but to invite them into the middle of the funnel, because that then is where you're going to really build them. If you can invite individuals into specific items and offerings from the parish that are where they're at, that's great. That's what they're looking for. That's what they want. They don't want the announcement soup at Mass that talks about all the different things that are going on, and the Knights of Columbus and the Catholic Daughters and the whatever mission charity of whatever. They're probably not interested in everything, and that's what the bulletin is for. If they're interested in knowing everything, do that. But if you're kicking off an alpha retreat, and that's going to evangelize people and light them on fire, like, announce that. And then that person, that soul that is seeking for God, they will resonate with that. So that's where you really want to bring them into the middle of that funnel, where you want to build them up, because you've done your homework, right? And you can list out then all the ministries that might actually be interesting to them. And if you've collected their email or got a phone number, then you can send out a targeted text. You can send out a targeted email that says, hey, you said you were interested in this. This is coming up. It might be a great fit for you. We'd love to see you there. Can we save you a seat? And begin that engagement on a deeper level that actually is just really good communication. So that's your middle of the funnel. And then the next one, then sending them, right? Win, build, send. Once you've had them around for a while, once you've kind of got them dialed in, you've been able to build a relationship with them, cross some of those thresholds of trust, then you actually want to send them. And this is more than just plugging them into religious ed. It's more than making them go give a talk at the RCIA. It's actually creating an opportunity, really, for them to discover the specific apostolic call that's on their life, right? What is their apostolate? What are the gifts that God has given them, right? A real opportunity for discernment. What gifts has God given me? And where are the needs that I can identify in my family, in my church, and in my community, that I can use the gifts that God gave me to answer those needs? So they begin to see a real dynamic interplay, a real dynamic living out of the mission that God has put on their life. And when you do that, it builds up your entire community. It also is going to feed your parish. Your parish is going to benefit from that. And so that's how I say we have to really think about our process for collecting that information, our process for engaging them in that conversation, inviting them into specific ministries that are dialed into what they're looking for, specific events that are catered towards the needs of our parishioners, and then leading them down the line, inviting them into an intentional discernment of the gifts, talents that God has given them and the needs that they can meet through those. And when you do that, again, I think that's beautiful. And by the way, if you are interested in having an event where you and your parishioners can come in and do some of that discernment together, start that conversation, we can do a parish mission for you with our spiritual gifts inventory that we created. You can have this parish mission. We can lead your parishioners through it, and by the end, you will have at least started the conversation of identifying 2 or 3 of their top spiritual gifts and how they can use those in their family, in their parish, in your parish, and in your community. And it could be a great way to start that conversation and really get the ball moving forward and see where God is calling all of you into active, fruitful ministry.
How do we start that conversation with us?
Well, they can email us at catholicmenpros@gmail.com.
There you go. Nice.
And with that, I think we can move into the devil's advocate.
Dun,
dun.
John, how could I possibly tell someone that the church won't admit them to a sacrament? That's counterintuitive. I'm not going to do it.
I know that is a tough pill to swallow. That is a bitter tonic. But it is a beautiful thing. Let's take a look though at what that approach of, like, if you want the sacrament, you get it, whatever. What has that approach brought us? It's brought us to a point where we know that 90% of today's youth that go through our programming, 90% of them stop practicing their faith by their early 20s. 90%. So if you got 10 kids in your youth group, chances are one of them will continue practicing their faith in their 20s, if you're lucky. And the other side of that too, it's not just the youth. For every one adult that joins the church, 6 or 7 are leaving the church, right? This is not okay. Like, this means things aren't working right. This means we need to do things better. That's the call. We just need to do them better. And that does mean some difficult conversations. It probably means sunsetting some ministries. But on the flip side, wouldn't you rather see a church where 90% of people stay in the church? Wouldn't it be great if, like, 15, 20 years from now, that's the stat that's out there? And that is what happens when we attach to the sacraments the weight of salvation that is proper to them. And it's because that is then a transformative experience of the God who communicates himself to us through the sacraments. So we need to help people understand that they're not just an achievement to unlock as they participate in the Catholic Church, right? They're not just leveling up. No, it's a participation. It's a participation in the very life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. These are key to unlocking and participating in his grace that is just poured out on the church, that fills our lives with peace, joy, hope, and just enters into eternal life. So the goal of those conversations isn't to act as gatekeepers necessarily to the sacraments, but it really is then to build up in their hearts and in their minds a desire to enter into the mystery of the sacraments, the mystery of the faith, and there to unlock the depth and richness of life in Jesus that he desires to give to us.
Yeah, and I think too, just I don't like the willy-nilliness of allowing everybody to be able to receive the sacrament if they don't truly understand what they're receiving. Because when you start to do that, then the Eucharist just becomes the wafer, and the blood of Christ just becomes the wine. And it no longer is the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And that affects how we genuflect when we show up to Mass. It affects if we go to confession or not. It affects how we live our lives, to the point where it's like, oh, I don't care if I go to Mass. I don't care if I, my decisions align with the mother church. Like, there's such huge ramifications if you're not gatekeeping it correctly. I remember as a catechist, some kid was mouthing off and he didn't even want to be in there. I'm like, dude, if you don't want to be here, why are you here? Oh, my mom made me. Okay, well then leave. There are people here that want to get confirmed. And next week he shows up again. I'm like, what are you doing here? If you don't want to be confirmed, get out of here. Turns out I got the talking to because we're supposed to confirm everybody.
Let them
he's,
all through.
yeah. I'm just like, well, then I think you got the wrong person. I'm not going to say which parish he was at, but it's like, I can't stand for that because now you're profaning the church that Jesus set up. Like, if you do one thing wrong in the church, and if you don't get it right just the way that it's supposed to be set up, or do things as it's prescribed, like, then you might as well just do whatever the heck you want.
Well, and that Pew Forum came out a number of years ago where they actually identified that 60% of people, Catholics, in the pews. So these are active, participating, practicing Catholics,
Tithing. Yep.
tithing Catholics. 60% of them don't even believe in the real presence, and that's what you get when you don't actually treat the sacraments like they matter. Like they have a real importance for our lives. When you just say like it's just something you need to do and just trust the grace, yada yada. Like, yeah, that's true. Grace is active, but grace is only active insofar as the recipient is able to receive it, right? This is why Jesus went out and he went to heal people, and there were places where he could not heal them because they didn't have the faith to be healed. Without faith, the grace is it's lost. Like it's not lost, but and I'm probably I'm probably getting myself into dangerous with semantics here, but there you have to have real faith for them to have real impact and import in your life. And that's if that's not there, like we need to take that seriously. We need to take that seriously. And honestly, there was a great book, my Monsignor James Shea, the University of Mary, on what was it, From Christendom to Apostolic Mission. And he made a really good point where he said we have to be more exacting of our members, right? So a lot of times what you run into in parish conversations, a parent comes in and I want this because I want it done this way. It's like, well, I'm sorry, you're not in charge,
Yeah.
but I want it because I want it, which is very true of our culture. Like I want it to be this way because I want it to be this way. But to actually say, no, that's not what it looks like to participate here. That's not what God is asking of us. That's not what God's leading us to. And that's the real fruit, right? When you come to these crucial conversations where you have to tell someone, I'm sorry, I can't baptize your child because we don't have a reasonable hope that they'll be raised in the faith.
Right.
And which is what the role of the godparent at least hopefully should do. But in the case where they're just bringing in their drinking buddy, that you're going to be the godfather because you've been my best buddy forever, but they are not practicing. Sometimes you got to have that really hard conversation of, I'm sorry, I can't baptize your child. This is why. But we can get there if you want to walk in this in a real way. So it just, when you get to those conversations, it's important to know that this is what God has called you to, right? And that's what goes all the way back to the beginning of our Catholic ministry professionals framework, understanding and discerning a clear vision for what God is calling you to. And when you do that, you have the weight of God behind you when you have these conversations. He's called you to this. So we just really need to lean into them and not be afraid, but to act in faith, to step out in faith and trust that where he's leading us, we can go.
Yeah. And act in love, true love, right? Not this, I love you, so I'm going to let you do whatever you want. But the love where there is this yearning for truth. And I need you to see that. And I can't just allow you to continue down this path of you're going to get your way no matter what. Now, if you think about it, back in the day when you converted to Christianity, you're signing your death warrant. Like you wanted to be a Christian because you believed it was true. You believed that Jesus Christ was Lord and he was resurrected and he will come again to finish all of this. So this life didn't matter. Now I think it's becoming the other way where it's like, well, this is the life that I want. I want to stay here and be really comfortable. And church is just part of that, right? Sunday or religious education day or whatever. And this is partly me going on my soapbox, but we have lost this idea that Christianity is Catholicism. I'm not even going to say Christianity, Catholicism is supposed to generate all of these saints, and right now we're not doing that. Couple of things that you'd mentioned that kind of made red flags pop up in my head of I shouldn't say red flags, that's not the right word. Bookmarks, because I like reading books. When you're talking about flipping that funnel upside down, have you ever read the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek?
I haven't, but you've mentioned it. Now I think I need to.
Yeah. So I have that book. You can borrow it. Just make sure you have your library card. Um, most companies talk about what they do, how they do it, and then why you should buy their product. Where Simon Sinek gives this awesome example of Apple computers. They make the iPhone, the iPads, the MacBooks, all that. They talk about why they're here first, right? We want to challenge the status quo. Here's how we're going to do it. And then here's what we sell. Do you want to buy it? And then it gets all of these people that have the same like-mindedness of like, we want to challenge the status quo as well. So we're going to buy and invest in this idea, not the product. The product is what it is. So I don't know, you probably don't remember this, but back in the early 2000s, Microsoft came out with a competitor to the iPod called the Microsoft Zune. And it was so much better than the iPod, like way ahead of its time. Somebody had approached Steve Jobs and said, you do realize that the Microsoft Zune is a better product. And he's just like, so who cares? For most people now, they're like, I don't like, where's he going with this? It wasn't the product that continued the momentum of the two companies. It was their purpose. It was their why. So now let's take a flip at our ministries. Here's what we do, right? Here's how we're going to do it. And oh, by the way, this is why we do it. It's kind of a, throwaway comment or whatever. Would you like to join us? Where for me, I'd like to see we flip it a little bit. Hey, here's why we're starting this ministry. It's because I don't want my kids to leave the church. I want my kids and my grandkids and their grandkids to be alive in their faith and to be able to see me in heaven, when this all goes away. How we're going to do that is by adhering to what the church prescribes. And then this is what it is. Here's this group. Can you join us on Thursdays at 7:00? But when you think about it, when we talk about, like you said from the outset, is, hey, we know they're going to come in for baptisms and confirmation and all these other things, RCIA, and then we'll jump them then. We'll invite them to all these stuff because we know they're coming in. And if they don't come in for RCIA, well, I guess we'll try again next year. Well, here's the problem with that. Have you heard the stat of like if the kid is the one to convert, then the likelihood of the entire family converting? Have you heard the statistics there?
I have. I don't have them memorized.
So when the kid comes to Christ, it's 3.5% likelihood that the families will convert. When the mom comes to Christ first, 17% of the time the family will convert. But if the dad comes to Christ first, 93% of the families will convert. 93, that's huge. So here we are looking at baptisms, RCIA, confirmation, and all these different things. We're looking at the kid, which is important, don't get me wrong. But you got to go to the head of the household, the head of the domestic church. We got to light the fire under these dudes to get them and their families involved, right? And I'm not saying, don't talk to the kids or don't talk to the moms. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to direct our attentions to the patriarch of the household. And we see this right now. We're seeing this, right? Disney, this huge conglomerate, right? Like they're never going to go away, blah, blah, blah. I think they will go away. I think there are other companies going for them. Now, over the last year, do you know how much money they've lost in stock, John?
No, I have no idea.
195 billion with a B as in Bravo, $195 billion. Why is that? Right? They've got this agenda with the LGBT stuff. They've got this agenda where love is love, but they're targeting kids. Well, I'm sorry, your audience isn't the kids. Now, the kids drive the demand, but it's the parents that they've inflamed, that they've really set off to the point where their stock is tanking. So, is the Catholic Church going to learn from that? Is the Catholic Church going to step up in a way that we can light the flames of our faith in these households, these domestic churches, to get them back in church where it's not just for Sunday Mass, where 60% of people don't even realize or believe that the Eucharist is Jesus's body, blood, soul, and divinity. So that's what stuck out to me. So how do we flip that to where let's start with why? Let's start with the purpose of why we have this ministry and why we're doing what we're doing versus, hey, we have these things. Can you show up? It's for XYZ reason. I think if we can get to that point, our ministries are going to be more fruitful. Our catechists are going to have more fun. It'll be more fulfilling. Our ministry professionals aren't going to be burnt out. They're not going to be fighting with people. They're going to be rewarded by people that are on fire, right? I don't know how many ministries you've been a part of, John, where you're just dreading what you're setting up to do because you're like, I don't know if anybody's going to show up. And the 2 or 3 people that show up are telling me how I could do my job better.
I can
And
neither
one of them's
confirm
Ethel.
nor deny.
Yeah. So I've been a part of a couple where it's like, man, I love this. Like, I cannot wait for this. Like, I wish we could do this every single day. I wish I could get paid to do this. Like, that's where I want to get to. So will you join me? Right? That's how you get people excited about doing ministries. And I love when you mentioned, like, what are people looking for? Where are they at? Let's take inventory of the ministries that they need. I can't even tell you, John, I'm gonna roll Northwest Iowa under the bus right now. I lived there for 7 years, and all I wanted was a young adult Bible study. You asked the parishioners there at All Saints. And it was to the point, and we talked about this. If there isn't a ministry that and you want it there, you start one. So I started one, young adults. And I was the youngest by like 30 or 40 years. And I hung on to it for about 2 years thinking, man, somebody's gonna show up. No, nobody showed up. It was, and there's nothing wrong with it, don't get me wrong. But that is not what my heart desired to lead, right? Like, it was the gray-haired or the blue-haired audience. Pretty sure Ethel showed up a couple of times in there, but we have to take inventory of what our parishioners need and actually execute on it. Because right now there are a lot of Catholics that, like you said, don't believe in our sacraments, like the Eucharist, like confession, like even probably baptism. But what they want and what they yearn for, they can find at a Protestant service, and that's where they're leaving to. Or they're just simply not going to a church at all, right? The rise of the nuns.
Well, because something the non-denominational church has gotten really good at is starting with why.
Mhm.
It's starting with why. So it is that need to change the funnel, to flip that script, to be able to line things up in a way where it does call their heart forward. It does speak to that why, so that we can then, okay, now I've got you here. Let's lead you to the next step. What's the next thing that I need to get there to satisfy that why in my heart? And absolutely what you're saying, I think that's 100% true. I
So
love
then
it.
how do we get to that point? Do you have any actionable steps for us?
I do have some actionable steps, and it's going to echo some of what we said above. I want you for this week, for your actionable steps, to come up with a process for collecting info from your parishioners. You want to know where they believe they are in the discipleship pathway. You want to know what they're interested in. You know, after an event, you want to be able to follow up too. You collect information on that. Okay, we had this event. We thought everybody wanted to go. You said you were interested in this kind of stuff. Why didn't you go? Right? That's the value then of knowing what people want, what they're asking for, where they're at in the pathway. You can start to really suss out where things are kind of broken on your chain of offerings and ministries. what things are worth putting your efforts into, but also then what works to get them there. And these are just normal parts of understanding your flock. It's normal parts of understanding your parishioners and providing food for their souls. So that can be really simple. It can be just what are they called? The Google surveys, a Google form that they can fill out online. You could have a little card stock printed and go to your nearest non-denominational church. They've got a great connect card that you can steal the idea from. You can copy and go. If you want, you can email us at catholicminpros@gmail.com, and I will send you a picture of the one that I found that I fell in love with. And it's just beautiful. It asks those questions. What are you interested in? Hey, here's 5 events that are coming up. By the way, here's a teaching on profanity and why profanity is not a good thing. You know, I mean, it just it was really well packaged, attractive, not cumbersome, but did that exact job of giving them a way to collect information and connect with their parishioners on a deeper level so they could intentionally reach out. Because that's the second thing is once you've collected the data, once you begin to understand where your parishioners are at, you need to begin then asking like that question of how do we intentionally invite them into the next phase of the journey. And I think a real place a lot of parishes need to wrestle with is how are we going to form our adults? I think that's what's going to come out of a lot of that data collection. How do we form our adults? What do we need to offer to them? And how do we offer it so they will actually want to engage the church in a new way?
I mean, that's so important to not forget about the adults.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it's it blows my mind, like, something as simple as, and I will say, as much as I just rolled All Saints Parish under the bus, they're really good at this. If there is a ministry, they offer child care, um, that coincides with that, so you don't have to worry if you've got kids or whatever. That's awesome, so they're thinking of the adults there, so they're good there.
Well, yeah, they're a good community. And honestly, I think we'd be surprised. A lot of people want to give their time. Um, they don't see how they have the time to do it.
Mhm.
They have that desire. And so, yeah, those are the actionable steps. And I think with that, we'll kind of roll the outro. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Catholic Ministry Professionals podcast. If you want to transform your parish through your work, but you're not sure where to start, download the free parish health assessment at catholicministryprofessionals.com/free assessment. It only takes about 5 minutes to fill out. And afterwards, you will have a color-coded picture of your parish's health that you can use to fuel better conversations, prioritize better work, and become a better leader. Email us at catholicminpros@gmail.com to share feedback or request a free consultation. And finally, don't forget to text this episode to a priest or friend in ministry that can benefit from it.
And with that, we'll see you in the vineyard.